An HOA ordered Tom Bennett to cut down his century-old oak tree or face crushing fines. Behind it all stood Karen Whitaker, a president infamous for abusing her power to fund a lavish clubhouse remodel. But when a sudden storm struck, nature itself delivered the verdict. Just wait until you hear how this battle for fairness ended, and why justice prevailed in the most unexpected way. For 15 years, Tom Bennett had cared for the towering live oak that shaded the front of his modest Florida home. It wasn't just a tree to him, it was a constant through the ups and downs of life. One of the first things he'd fallen in love with when buying the house in Clearwater Lakes, a tightly managed HOA community near Tampa. The tree stood proudly in his front yard, its sprawling limbs providing cool shade from the relentless Florida sun. Birds nested in its branches, children played beneath its roots. Neighbors often stopped to admire it, commenting on its beauty and the sense of history it brought to the street. The tree had likely stood there long before any of the homes in Clearwater Lakes were built. Tom knew every creak of its old limbs, every cluster of moss swaying in the breeze. Then came the letter. It arrived one muggy morning in late July, a certified envelope from Clearwater Lakes Homeowners Association. The bold red print at the top immediately set Tom on edge. Violation notice. Non-compliant, hazardous tree. Tree must be removed within 14 days. He read it twice, then a third time, unable to believe what he was seeing. According to the notice, the HOA's new board had deemed his beloved oak a danger to the community. It claimed that if the tree were to fall, it could cause severe property damage, specifically to the HOA clubhouse, located across the street. Buried in the fine print was a further warning. Failure to comply will result in a daily fine of $500 and may result in legal action to ensure compliance. Tom was stunned. Less than 3 months earlier, the county arborist had inspected the tree and certified it healthy and structurally sound, with no immediate risk to nearby structures. He'd even proudly shown the report to a few neighbors. How could the HOA now declare it dangerous? And on what authority? Confused and increasingly uneasy, Tom decided to attend the next HOA board meeting. Surely this was some kind of mistake. When the day of the meeting arrived, he walked into the newly renovated clubhouse, clutching the arborist's report in hand. At the head of the table sat Karen Whitaker, the newly elected HOA president. Karen was known around the neighborhood, sharp-featured, always dressed in crisp business suits, and rarely seen without a clipboard in hand. She had swept into power on a platform of cleaning up the community and had wasted no time issuing citations for everything from slightly faded shutters to lawn decorations she deemed unsightly. Now, apparently, she had set her sights on Tom's oak tree. When it was his turn to speak, Tom calmly presented the county report, stating that there was no valid reason to remove the tree. Karen didn't blink. "Your tree is an eyesore and a liability," she said curtly. "If it falls, it will damage our clubhouse. The board's decision is final." "But the arborist," Tom began. Karen cut him off with a wave of her manicured hand. "The board's ruling supersedes that. You will comply or pay the price." Tom sat there for a moment, stunned. Was this really happening? A healthy, protected tree, one of the oldest living things in the neighborhood, was now being treated as a nuisance simply because the board felt it was a risk. He left the meeting with a sinking feeling in his stomach, and as he walked out beneath the familiar shade of his oak, Tom knew one thing for certain: he'd just made a powerful new enemy. In the days that followed the board meeting, Tom's initial shock curdled into deep resentment. What had once felt like a misunderstanding now revealed itself as something far more deliberate. The more Tom spoke with neighbors, the clearer the picture became. Karen Whitaker wasn't acting alone. Since becoming HOA president 6 months prior, she had begun a relentless campaign of citations and fines. Residents whispered that her true motive was to funnel more money into her personal project, an extravagant clubhouse renovation complete with a marble entryway, new gym equipment, and catered community events. The budget had ballooned, and homeowners were footing the bill through mounting fines and special assessments. Several families had already given in to her demands, either paying questionable penalties or selling their homes entirely to escape the mounting pressure. Tom, however, wasn't about to be bullied. He scheduled a meeting with David Moore, a seasoned property attorney well versed in Florida's HOA laws. After reviewing the documents, David's assessment was blunt. The HOA can't force you to cut down a protected tree. The county arborist's certification holds legal weight. They can threaten fines all they want, but unless they get a court order, which they won't, they have no enforceable right here. Armed with this clarity, Tom drafted a formal response, citing the arborist's report and legal precedents. He sent it via certified mail to the HOA board. For a brief moment, Tom felt a flicker of relief. Surely the board would back down in the face of clear legal boundaries. He underestimated Karen's determination and her ego. 2 mornings later, Tom awoke to find 3 garish neon violation signs staked across his front lawn. They read, HOA violation, hazardous tree, daily fines in effect. To add insult to injury, his online homeowner account now displayed a growing balance. $500 added daily under non-compliance penalties. Neighbors slowed their cars to stare. Some offered sympathetic waves. Others simply drove by in silence. Then came the final straw. One afternoon, Tom's next-door neighbor, Linda Martinez, caught him as he brought in his mail. "I thought you should know," she whispered. "Karen was at the clubhouse this morning. I overheard her telling the landscapers to get ready to remove your tree next week, with or without your permission." Tom's stomach twisted. The situation was escalating, fast. The hatred simmering inside him boiled over. He had tried to handle this calmly, within the law, but now Karen was planning to cross a legal line and physically destroy a tree the county had protected. Enough was enough. That evening, Tom called his attorney again, and then contacted the county's Environmental Protection Office. Together, they prepared an emergency injunction to halt any unauthorized action against the tree. As the legal wheels began to turn, a new threat appeared on the horizon. A slow-moving tropical storm had formed offshore, its path uncertain, but inching closer to Florida's Gulf Coast. Tom watched the weather reports with a sinking feeling, and a growing sense that forces beyond the HOA might soon have their say. 2 days before the landscapers were set to arrive and carry out Karen's orders, the unexpected happened. Hurricane Nestor, once projected to weaken, rapidly intensified and shifted its path overnight. By morning, Clearwater Lakes was under a full tropical storm warning. Tom stood on his porch, phone in hand, scrolling through the latest updates from the National Weather Service. Wind speeds were climbing, and bands of heavy rain were already sweeping across the region. He glanced at the great oak, massive, deeply rooted, and calm beneath the storm clouds. He secured his home carefully, storm shutters drawn, gutters cleared, supplies stocked. Through it all, the oak stood like a steadfast guardian, its sprawling limbs dancing in the rising wind. Across the street, the HOA clubhouse gleamed under the gray sky. Just days earlier, Karen had celebrated the completion of the first phase of her ambitious remodel. New roof trusses reinforced with decorative beams, gleaming glass walls framing the front atrium, and plush new carpeting freshly installed inside. Tom couldn't help but think of her smug expression at the last board meeting. Now, the winds howled through Clearwater Lakes with growing force. As the storm peaked late that evening, gusts reached 74 miles per hour, sharp, unpredictable, relentless. Tom sat in his living room, candles flickering, listening to the creaks of his home and the roar of wind outside. Then came the sound. A sharp, cracking report, loud enough to shake the floor. He rushed to the window just in time to witness it. One of the oak's massive upper limbs, battered by the storm, split from the main trunk. In a slow, terrible arc, it swung like a battering ram across the street. The branch struck the clubhouse's front atrium with brutal force. Glass exploded outward, steel beams twisted, and a torrent of wind-driven rain poured inside. Tom stood frozen, heart pounding, a storm of conflicting emotions washing over him. Horror at the sheer violence of the impact, but beneath it, a grim, undeniable sense of justice served. Karen's prized project, the centerpiece of her crusade against Tom and his tree, now lay shattered by the very thing she had sought to destroy. By dawn, the storm had passed. Blue skies peeked through ragged clouds. Tom stepped outside and surveyed the aftermath. The oak stood tall, wounded, but unbroken. The clubhouse, however, was another story. Emergency crews swarmed the site. Shattered glass littered the walkway. Rain-soaked carpeting squelched beneath boots. Bent steel and twisted beams told the story of the night's fury. Photos of the destruction spread rapidly through the neighborhood's group chat. Residents buzzed with disbelief. Karen's pet project had crumbled in less than an hour, a bitter irony no one could miss. As Tom reviewed the damage from a distance, a message from his lawyer arrived. Legally, you're covered. County documentation is on your side. They have no case. For the first time in weeks, Tom exhaled, a slow, measured breath. He hadn't wished for this outcome, but as nature delivered its verdict, one truth became clear. No one stands above the law or the storm. In the days that followed the storm, the story of Clearwater Lake's oak tree battle spread far beyond the neighborhood. Local news picked it up quickly. HOA clubhouse damaged by storm. Dispute over protected tree at center of controversy. Footage of the shattered atrium and rain-soaked clubhouse looped across the evening broadcasts. Reporters interviewed residents, many of whom had grown weary of the HOA's tactics long before the storm arrived. The board scrambled to control the narrative. Karen Whitaker issued a carefully worded statement blaming an unfortunate act of nature, making no mention of her aggressive efforts to force the tree's removal. But the truth was already out. Word of the HOA's attempts to sidestep county protections and their ongoing harassment of Tom Bennett spread rapidly through neighborhood forums and community groups. Public opinion shifted swiftly. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down now spoke openly about the endless fines, the arbitrary violations, and the clubhouse's spiraling renovation budget. Many rallied behind Tom, praising his determination to stand up for what was right. Behind closed doors, the board fractured. Several long-serving members, alarmed by the growing backlash, called for an emergency vote to censure Karen. Facing mounting pressure, and knowing her position had become untenable, Karen stepped down just 5 days after the storm. The official announcement cited personal reasons, but few believed it. Meanwhile, another blow landed. The HOA filed an insurance claim to cover the clubhouse damage, but the insurer quickly denied it, citing the HOA's willful disregard of documented environmental protections. The clause was clear: the tree had been certified as safe. Attempts to forcibly remove it, combined with a paper trail of legal warnings, left the HOA exposed. The result? A repair bill exceeding $120,000, a cost that would now drain the HOA's general fund, with no reimbursement in sight. As for Tom, the shift was immediate. The neon violation signs vanished from his lawn overnight. His online account showed the fines quietly erased, no explanation given. Life gradually returned to normal. Weeks later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Tom hosted a small backyard barbecue. Friends and neighbors gathered beneath the towering oak, its branches stretching wide once more. Laughter and conversation filled the air, a welcome contrast to the tension of weeks past. As the sun dipped low, Tom leaned back in his chair and glanced across the street. The clubhouse still bore the scars of the storm. Tarps covering shattered windows, scaffolding wrapped around bent beams. He sipped his drink and allowed himself a small, quiet smile. Sometimes, he thought, nature delivers justice better than any lawyer ever could. And this time, it had done so with perfect timing.